Thank you all for being here. I think we got a pretty fun presentation here. It's interesting, we started to go through all of the photos that we have, and we have a lot of content. You know, between Cape Cottage and Town Center Station, we have a lot, and it's not overwhelming, but you know, it kind of made us think that, you know, perhaps we need to break this up into a couple of different sections. And I don't know if this has ever been done with a historical society before. I think it may have been, but we're going to be doing it just a little bit differently today. What we'd like to do is we'll go through briefly the history of the fire department, but we're going to be focusing on kind of the last 30 and 40 years. You know, certainly the folks on this side can speak a little bit more intimately with those times, and we don't want to dismiss the early times at all, but we want to go back and kind of get some more information before we share the next volume. The other thing I want to mention is the photos that we've gathered. The unfortunate part about them is that a lot of them are, you know, we don't know who took them. So we do want to give special thanks to anyone who's taken the photos, anyone in this room. We really do want to give credit to them because, you know, 95% of the ones we really don't know who took them. And the other part is that, you know, we do want your feedback, especially after this presentation, on what you guys would like to see. We'd certainly like to continue doing this, and if there's a certain area in the department that you'd like to learn more of, please let us know. And fourth, like the chief said, you know, we certainly want to make this interactive. If there's a portion of this, or many portions that are inaccurate, please throw a tomato at me, get my attention, and we'll rectify it. And I think we did just mention the land trust. This was back in May. This is, you know, only a few months ago, but they asked us out to burn the field, the blueberry field. So this is kind of a recent picture. So like I said, the history it's pretty long, and we will go back to, you know, the early 1900s. But for most of today, we're going to be focusing on the last three chiefs. And like I said, it's not to diminish any of the history, but it's to kind of focus on a lot of the content that we have more recently. So we'll go back to the early years here. Cape Cottage Station. That picture is pretty familiar. I'm sure you see this all the time, but there's I'd say a mid-90s photo of some of the members there, and gosh, some of them are still in the department. So we'll go way back. You know, the fire department for a while, you know, Cape Elizabeth didn't actually have a fire department. And so services were gained from South Portland. Incidentally, this picture is at the Willard Station. South Portland had two stations in particular, Willard and Ferry Village, which were two of the first couple stations that Cape Elizabeth got a lot of their fire service from. But for a while, there wasn't a whole lot in Cape Elizabeth. The chief sent me this, and I thought it was pretty interesting. And I wish we could kind of have a hard copy of this here. But this is, you know, a pretty comprehensive roster of the apparatus that Cape Elizabeth had up until 1993. And it's pretty interesting. You'll see a few patterns here. Engine 1 would get an apparatus, and then Engine 2 would kind of follow suit with something very similar. But it's pretty interesting how things go. Really, when you look at it, you know, back until 1916, we really haven't had that many trucks, and they've lasted a long time. But we'll go through and we'll see some of the different rigs. You know, I think they're kind of interesting. First one, 1916, Engine Company 1. Was established, and that's, you know, a pretty grainy pic, but there she is. More of a hose wagon, and it wasn't a new truck, and you'll see kind of in the next slide what it was replaced with. 1924, the new Seagrave pumper. brand new, purchased for engine one. This truck, I believe this was the antique that the department had for a long time, and when I started it was actually given to Seagrave, donated, but this was a 1924 truck. Looks a lot different from the ones running around today. Certainly the open cab was probably nice in the summer, but maybe not so much in the winter.
And that truck is currently in the Seagrave Museum in Wisconsin. Currently.
That's right. We have a photo of it being taken off on a flatbed. It was kind of sad, but I think it's in a better place now. 1920s were certainly a time of change for the department. After Engine Company 1 was established, Engine Company 2 shortly after. We mentioned the new Seagrave pumper for Engine 1, and then shortly after, a Seagrave pumper for Engine 2 would follow. All the equipment was moved to the basement of Town Hall, and you'll kind of see why, but shortly they would run out of space, and a new station would be built. Very important, 26, a tapper system was created to notify some of the members. Today we have scanners and beepers, but cell phones too, yeah.
The alarms on cell phone.
Yeah, so pretty interesting. Probably most notably, 1930, the first fire chief was appointed. They went quite a while without some leadership, but it was definitely needed. I want to point out too that at this time, the population of Cape Elizabeth was about 2,500 in 1930-ish. That was a huge swelling from the earlier times, and it's kind of reflected in the fact that they decided that they needed more adequate fire service. I promised you a picture of the Engine 2. There it is. Looks very similar to Engine 1, kind of the same deal. Yeah, I think that one is the one that was... Yeah, the water was carried in the back, somewhat similar to the ones... Yes, yeah. There's definitely a hose reel back there. Sort of similar to the ones today to kind of even out the weight. I don't know how many gallons this thing had.
Yeah,
I don't think it was a lot.
The water tank wasn't very big, and it's right behind the driver's seat, right? Just a steel tank up on top of the truck. Probably,
yeah.
Probably not much more than 100 gallons, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. Cape Cottage Station. This probably looks pretty familiar to a lot of you folks. Certainly to me. The striking thing about this photo, I noticed a couple different things. Obviously, one, the cookie jar's not there, so I don't know when that happened, but it's hardly recognizable. The second part is that the apron's a lot different than it is now. Now it's kind of paved over with asphalt. And third, of course, is it's a two-bay station. When I was growing up, it still was, but this was modified, I think, in 2004-ish.
2005, we took the pillar out and put one big door in. I'll just put my mic on here so you guys can hear me. But the big reason why we took the pillar out was the trucks were getting bigger and the building was still the same size. So we ended up taking the pillar out in 2005, I believe that was the date. We put one single door in there. The issue we were having was with the mirrors of the trucks. We have ladders on the side of the trucks, so when you're pulling out, if you incorrectly turn, people were taking the ladders out of the side of the buildings. So that was the big issue. But now if you go down there now, we have a current truck that we'll show you is quite large, fits in there quite nicely. And it's just a lot easier for the guys to back in. Shore Road's not a great road to back in to the station on, especially in the wintertime. So taking those two doors out and putting one single one in was pretty huge.
When I started to drive the trucks, I learned at this station. You actually taught me. And it's funny, sometimes we'll get members that start out at Town Center Station, and for whatever reason, they'll have to back up into Cape Cottage, and, you know, it's a challenge. Back up traffic a little bit, but, you know. The other thing you probably notice here is the addition is not on yet. It you know, wasn't built with that.
Yeah. That addition, I think, was built on for the police department.
Yep.
Back originally.
Ladder truck. There was a ladder truck stationed here. This was the first one Cape Elizabeth had. And sometimes we'll tell people that there was actually a ladder truck down there, and they don't believe it, but it is true. We have proof. And there she is, stationed there with engine 1. 42, which I found pretty interesting, pretty early, I kind of felt, but a fire alarm operator was hired. So this was the Maine station at the time.
And you had the cookie jar.
Yeah, yep. Prices were different. 1948, so in response to the wildfires, I believe that was 47, southwestern Maine, destroyed a lot of the area. There's a little hysteria about fire protection, specifically for some of the vegetation. Cape Elizabeth, obviously, a very rural part. So the department decided to buy a tank truck, and I wish I knew how much water this thing held. I think it was actually a decent amount, but we're not actually sure. This was kind of an interesting tank. I don't believe that it had a pump, and it was kind of simply a nursing truck where it would simply have water, and it could go kind of anywhere. And this would kind of start a little bit of a tradition of having a tank forestry truck for some of the areas that were prone to wildfires. New Seagrave engine in 1953. This would replace the original Seagrave here. Looks pretty sharp back then too.
Just go back to that.
Yeah.
So this truck here was actually owned by one of our members. I believe this was one of the trucks Jerry Murray had as when they got rid of it for the town. But this was a huge step up to the town when the town bought this, because it actually was more of a pump capacity for a truck. It could do a lot more stuff than the older trucks before that. And most of the cities around the area were running this type of apparatus. And that was actually a gasoline. And a lot of the trucks we have now are diesel. That was a gasoline powered truck, but that was a huge upgrade for the town to getting a truck that like that.
54 was a big year. A new station was built in the area, town center. I certainly remember this growing up. Looked a little bit different, but this was the new engine 2 quarters, and you'll see in a few other photos that it was added on and kind of retrofitted, and eventually the police department kind of took over that space. But this was kind of one of the original picks here. It had an air horn too. Very interesting. Similar to engine 1, a new Seagrave engine was purchased to replace the 1930s truck. Good life for the 1930s truck too, not bad. Another photo of that truck here. What I found kind of interesting is, we have a consolidated dispatch now, our communications center, and we use the prefix, the 6, to designate Cape Elizabeth. And I thought this was kind of a new thing. It's really not. I mean, it's been around for quite a while. This truck is proof here. But I thought it was very interesting, designated 65, but obviously the ownership on engine company 2 shows a little bit of the pride there. In 1959, I thought this was pretty progressive for the time. You know, EMS is relatively new in the whole history of the fire service. But this was purchased here with the Engine 2 company. And I guess this was the original bread truck. I kind of thought it was the later one, but this was the original one. And this was serving as the rescue. There'd be a couple of modifications, and you'll see in later photos that this changed a little bit. But a true ambulance was purchased in '64. And I thought it was interesting. This was from a public fund drive. And if you look at the history of the rescue company, you know, a lot of that was funded by, you know, the people in the community, which is pretty strong. But I found that kind of interesting that, you know, it started way back here. I also think it's interesting the seal on there is similar to what Public Works still has today. Very nice. All right, so modifications begin to the station, the town center station. A new bay was constructed, '69, and that'd be for the rescue. 3 bays up front, and then this one in the back here. There'd be a couple of other additions through, you know, into the '90s before it was turned over to the police station and rebuilt, but this was a big one. Looks like a pretty generous bay. 1970. So this was a big one. This is a big milestone here. The department started up the fire prevention leg, and to this day we still do it. You know, we've had a lot of folks from the department kind of head up that initiative. You know, a lot of it we do through the elementary school. It's great fun, and I know talking to Johnny, you've worn that before, right?
I have.
Yeah.
Should have wore it tonight, John.
Yeah, I should have.
I think we can probably dig it up somewhere. I know it's someplace. 71. A new rescue vehicle was produced here. Striking paint scheme too. Looked pretty sharp. '71. A new apparatus was delivered. This is for to replace engine 3. I believe this was the Howe, and I'm quite sure this is still around. And I think if you go to South Portland, you'll see it. Yep.
Yeah, so this is still around. There's a gentleman in South Portland named Rick Cotton. He still currently owns this truck. He brings it out for parades, and it is still just as good a condition as this is now. But it is a sharp-looking truck.
And I did miss a little bit, but dispatch was at Engine 1 at Cape Cottage previously. But it was actually moved to the town center station in '71. '75, another addition. The police station was moved from Cape Cottage to the town center. So this is basically where the parking lot, where the police cruisers are now, roughly. So pretty interesting. So, you know, essentially this has become, you know, the fire station has become kind of the public safety complex. '75, a new ladder truck was delivered. It wasn't really new though. It was from South Portland, purchased at a nominal price, and the town was able to get quite a few years out of it. This was the first hydraulic ladder truck that the town had. Before that, it was a city service ladder truck. And you'll see there was a pretty interesting retrofit that was pretty clever. But this, of course, was at Town Center Station. Long time. They're the rescue trucks there, kind of from newest on the left to oldest. I don't know if they had all 3 ever in service at the same time. I don't think they did. But you can see the newest one, state of the art. On the left, this was a custom box, and although the ones today look a little different, it's kind of the same concept. And I'm sure the folks back then had plenty of room to work. Appreciative of that. 78. The new pages were assigned to some of the members. I think now we have similar ones. They're Minotaur 6, I believe. So kind of interesting. Not that long ago, I suppose, but still doing it. New engine was delivered. This was to Cape Cottage Station. And I know you guys can speak to this one quite a bit. This was well before my time, but a lot of the folks that were able to work on this truck said it was awesome. And riding around with that top open was a lot of fun, it sounded like. So another truck was purchased. This is actually still engine one, but this is a photo of it. I believe this was later. I think this was 2004 when it was replaced. But before that, it was painted with a new white over red paint scheme, and I think some retrofits were done. But great shot of it by the down there in the fort. I mentioned the ladder truck. We've got to go back to the ladder truck. In '81, a huge refurbishment was done. A new cab and chassis was put on the old ladder truck, which I thought was pretty clever. The cab there is similar to engine 1 and engine 2. So I'm sure it was easy for the mechanics to work on. But yeah, I mean, they were able to get another 10, 12 years out of this one.
Yeah, and unfortunately, they put the money into rechassing it. That is the original 1950-something Ariel, but about 8 years after they redid the truck, the ladder portion was condemned. So, yeah, sometimes older isn't better, especially with fire apparatus. You need it to be safe for us to be climbing on and stuff. So I'm sure Jake's a nice picture of the one that replaces it here coming out.
It was a good idea. It was a great effort.
Yeah.
The 80s were a pretty big decade here. A lot of changes. I'm sure many of you were here for the wet team's presentation, which I heard was very good. The wet team started up in 1988, and I was surprised to hear that. I thought it was long before that, but it wasn't. And often overlooked, the fire police unit was organized in 1990. And I think all of us here certainly appreciate what they do, because down on Shore Road in 77, especially with the traffic now, it's hard to work. So certainly appreciate what they do. Chief McGoldrick was appointed in 1992 and served a very healthy tenure until 2008. And I'm sure you guys, this was your first chief, but a lot of changes in the 80s and early 90s. The fire chief mentioned the new ladder truck. So this is it. This is going back to Seagrave, favorite manufacturer. This was a lot different. This is the first enclosed cab that the department had. And certainly a pretty iconic looking truck. One thing you'll notice here is it's got kind of a low profile. And I believe even with modifications to the fire station, this was the only way to fit it in. So you can kind of see it sits pretty low. And even sitting in it, it felt almost like a car. It certainly didn't sound like it, but.
No. Yeah. And that truck served the town of Cape Elizabeth for, I believe, 28 years. And it's still in service today up in Wiscasset, correct, John?
Yeah.
Wiscasset's still running that.
Yeah, so Wiscasset, Maine bought it, and they were running into a similar situation with their station, trying to find a truck that could fit, and they run it up in Wiscasset now.
They love it. Speaking of trucks that they love, this was engine 3. This was purchased in 1995, and we had it up until a couple of years ago. It was serving as a spare truck for us. I never pumped it out of fire, but talking to some of the people, they say it was the best pumper in the fleet. It's a great truck. It's a great truck. Pretty slow, but once it got going, it would go.
And that truck right there is currently in service in Sweden, Maine. It's running as a frontline truck and getting a lot of work out of it still. So.
Yeah. I talked to some of the folks that are on Sweden's department. They absolutely love the truck. So we're pretty happy. I think over the years it was taken care of, and certainly proud of that. All right, getting kind of in the 90s here, late 90s. New pumper was custom built to replace the 81. Today we still have this. This is our spare pumper, and I'm sure you see it here around town from time to time. We have a couple of pictures later on of this from the factory, and it just looked immaculate. This is kind of the big thing, you know, with the size of apparatus and the department growing, and certainly the advent of the wet team, the town decided that they needed a bigger station. In talking to some of the folks, you know, it wasn't just a done deal that they would be pretty creative and take the public works building. I think there were some thoughts of building a new station, but eventually they decided to retrofit what they had, and this is kind of an early rendering of it. And I gotta say, it looks pretty sharp even today. Looks all right. We, you know, power washer from time to time, but it still serves. Now, at this time, and this was 2001, I believe, you know, the company was all volunteer, all call. So besides the fire chief, and I'd like to say maybe an assistant, I'm not sure. No admin?
About 6 years ago.
Okay. So there's one person at the fire station during the day. No one's sleeping there at night. Today we have a crew of 5, plus the fire chief and admin, and then sometimes students. So, you know, we can have up to, you know, 8 people at the station during the day. So, you know, its function is certainly changing. But I thought it was interesting. I certainly remember when this was Public Works, and I couldn't find many great pictures. I have one later, but it was kind of interesting to see that. I had no idea that it was a 3-bay Public Works garage, kind of like what they have now down on Denison. But I thought they did a good job. So moving to the 21st century. The town manager, Matt Sturge, when he left, we did a little something down at the fort where we got the whole fleet, or most of the fleet, and we took a couple of good pictures of it. You know, from time to time there are photos of the fleet, and it's certainly changed quite a bit. And this is a great representation of that. We won't go that far yet. We gotta talk about 2002. A new wet van for the water extrication team was purchased, and you probably still see this around today because we still use it. You know, it's certainly lasted a while, and I think it's only got like 6,000 miles on it, but certainly interesting. They do a good job with it. Service 4 was the old Engine 4 that was down at Cape Cottage. And I thought this was really interesting. They took the body off of it, and they modified it to be a service truck. It hauls the boat, much like what we do today. So history kind of repeats itself a little bit, but that was the original one. 2004 was a big year. A new custom apparatus was built. And a lot of this, from what I understand, was a lot of the input from the Engine 1 members, and admin, of course. But the design of the truck was very different. You know, this was a rescue pumper. The compartments were a little bit deeper, and they could hold more tools. This one is still our first out truck. Now it's at Town Center Station, but it's a great truck, and looks a little different. It had a refurbishment, but this is what it looked like when it was relatively new.
And like Jake says, we're currently running that truck on an everyday basis, and that truck is staffed with 3 firefighter EMS providers 24 hours a day now. So that truck gets a lot of use.
A lot of use.
Yeah, just that truck also too was the first truck in town that had a foam system on it, which was very different. So a little bit about foam, won't go too much into it. It obviously puts the fire out a lot quicker, and you actually save on water with it. So if you mix the foam with the water, it actually gets you more water capacity for the truck, so you can actually put out more volumes of fire with it. And that truck was the first truck in town to have a foam system on the truck, and we still use the foam today.
But it's the good foam, not the PFAS foam that
Yeah.
you see about on the news.
Yeah, it's
all
not-
that foam is protein foam that's all
Yeah.
clean and good.
Yeah, so there's
Safe.
different types of foams, and this foam is just used for structural firefighting. The foam he's talking about is like for airport use. We don't use
Fuel
any of
fires.
that foam out here, but
2007, a new forestry truck was delivered. I don't know if all of this, but some of it was from a grant. This truck came with a skid unit, a pump on the back that was able to be taken off in the winter if needed, put it back on. I think mostly it was on pretty much all the time. But this truck was stationed down at Cape Cottage for a long time. Actually, only until a couple of years ago it was kind of repurposed. But it's a great truck, still is. Today, we've taken the pump off and kind of modified it, the truck itself. Now this is a service truck, kind of a nod to the past. So this will haul the boat sometimes, or really anything else, and have a lot of our rock rescue equipment on it too. The pump itself is still in use. We were donated a trailer, and some of the department members kind of outfitted it with that pump. And so if we do have a wildland fire or neighboring towns need it, we will haul it with this truck here. More changes in the late 2000s. Peter Gleason, appointed fire chief. He would replace Chief McGouldrick. And then a big thing in 2009, Consolidated Dispatch. Before that, Cape Elizabeth dispatched themselves. And it was actually right at Town Center Station in the current building, in the front room, which is now kind of our conference room. So that was all done, Portland, South Portland, and Cape, as it's done today. 2012, another change. One licensed member on the rescue team was put on duty, and this was from Sunday through Saturday, 8 to 5, Town Center Station. So they had one person. The rescue company, I think that probably deserves its own presentation because the history is pretty interesting. I'm sure a lot of you know. But the company is very strong, and a lot of the folks in town, some of them are still on the department today, but they would always have a great turnout for calls. So this was a change. 2015, one rescue person was on duty, now 16 hours a day, so gradually increasing it. And I should note too that the population had increased quite a bit, certainly since the 70s.
Yeah, one of the real driving factors of staff in the ambulance was back when they were doing an all on-call volunteer basis, we did about 300 EMS calls annually. Now the department's doing over 1,200 calls a year, so that's way too much to depend on volunteers and stuff. And a round trip to the hospital now takes well over an hour between, between doing the patient care reports, and there's so much more into it than you could ask a volunteer to do. So.
Longer if the bridge is up.
Yeah, longer. Bridge is a factor.
Yeah. 2016 was another big year. went to 24-hour coverages for the ambulances. So for the first time, folks were sleeping at the station. The station was modified to accommodate that. And then in 2016, a few months later, the second person was on duty. So essentially, the ambulance was staffed 24/7 with two people, and generally it was a paramedic with a driver. And I know you would often do shifts on the ambulance too, right?
Yeah.
So pretty interesting. A lot of the members, certainly with tenure, remember this is a big deal for the department. Great picture here, kind of a throwback to those three engines. This was not too long ago, 2016. Kind of bittersweet, as I'm told, because later those two trucks would go away. But they're in good hands now. They're in preservation, like the captain said. 2018, I won't step on the wet team's presentation or anything, but it was a big year because a new boat was delivered. It's a new Zodiac boat, and certainly helped out quite a bit, as I'm sure they can speak of. It's interesting, it's a big boat, but when you have 4 other members from the wet team, it gets pretty tight, even now. Pretty amazing what they can do, especially getting it out of Kettle Cove. I'm still amazed that they can not beach it, but they do a good job.
What happened to the first boat?
Yeah, the orange one I believe was sold, and I think it was a department. I'd like to say it was around Sebago in that area.
It was sold to Casco, Maine. They use it on the lakes up there now.
Still in use.
Still in use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when we did fundraising for it, didn't you?
Yep.
Yeah, and you may be catching the gist here that Cape Elizabeth sells a lot of its used surplus equipment in excellent shape. We don't wear it out, but we are fortunate to be well supported by the citizens of Cape Elizabeth, buying us nice new apparatus and state-of-the-art stuff. And so it makes a difference that even though we've looked at 100 years of trucks here, there hasn't been a whole ton of them, but you can see we've progressed very steadily, and it comes at a cost, but like I say, we're well supported and funded by the town. So
They keep saying, every year is a kind of a big deal, something happens. But 2018 was, in addition to the 2 folks on the rescue all the time, a decision was made to start doing coverage for the engine company. And this, just kind of like the ambulance, was a gradual progression. It started out, it was 7 to 5. We'd have 2 members staffing. I believe at the time it was engine 2, and then it was ladder 65. But 2 members, so they'd be there 7 to 5, and then leave, and other folks would come back the next day. But it was the first time that a fire suppression unit was staffed in Cape. So it definitely brought a different dynamic to the department.
And again, it was due to the fact that volunteer numbers would drop in, call volume was going up, and you just couldn't count on the farmers weren't in town as much as they were years ago to leave the tractors to come answer calls for us, and not as many people working in town and responding to calls. It was definitely the right thing to do to provide the best public service to the citizens, is to get some staffing up there.
2019, a new ambulance was delivered, replaced an older Ford. A twin would be added a couple of years later. We talk about the ladder truck a lot. This is our current ladder truck, ladder 65. This was when it was first delivered. This was 2019. This was, a pretty revolutionary truck. It was, not only a ladder truck, but it also had water. Had a pump too. They called it a quint for the 5 functions that it could do. So a 100-foot ladder and about a 480-gallon tank. Beautiful truck.
And that truck will be in service in town for probably another 20-plus years. So.
Well, how often do you use the ladders?
I mean, any call, any fire call, it'll go. It'll go on special calls too. You know, if we have a rock rescue, we're able to use the ladder for that sort of extrication. There are times where it goes out of town too, for mutual aid. But the way that we staff the station now is that we have a pumper, smaller and more nimble, that goes out first. And the ladder truck goes out generally with the call folks that come back and staff the rigs. And I mentioned that it was about 7 to 5 that the per diem fireside was initially. 2019, this was increased again, 7 to 7. So it kind of mirrored the ambulance shift, just not at night. But once the new bedrooms were completed, another renovation of the current station, the staffing was increased to nights. So 2019, we had a crew of 4 staffing at the time the ladder and the ambulance for 24 hours a day, which is pretty interesting. And you know, some of the folks that were on the ambulance were cross-trained as firefighters, not all of them. And you know, kind of the same deal with on the fire side. Some are EMTs, not all of them. A couple photos here. Just doing a little bit of training down at the fort. Didn't think we could reach it. We did. (2022) new engine 61. This was planned, part of a capital improvement plan. But this was a new truck. Same manufacturer as some of the more modern trucks that we have now. But this is a photo, obviously, down at the lighthouse. So this one would go to Cape Cottage. And the captain mentioned the door being, you know, pretty tight. And I'll tell you, even with a double door, this thing barely fits. But
yeah, so this truck actually just fits into the station height-wise. By like about 6 inches. So when we first got it, if you look at the top of the truck, we have a thing called a deck gun, and that's what we use for like large volumes of fire. It actually sticks out of the truck upwards. And so when we first backed into the station, I was sitting down there with the chief, and I'm like, oh, I don't know if this is gonna fit in the station. And it did, but it's by just about like 6 inches. So we got to make sure when we're done using that, we put it down to put it in. But like I said, that station was built back in the 30s, so it's hard to, we have to make the trucks as low as we can with it. And this is based on a Boston-style truck because down in Boston, obviously, they have tight streets and small quarters there. Some of their firehouses are from the 1800s, so we based our design off a Boston pumper.
And you mentioned the deck gun, it's here, but you can tell it must have been a skillful operator because I think he put it down knowing that it's going to go back in the station. Very mindful.
Can I ask
Of course.
is the reason that they did more staffing, the reason that now when there's a rescue, you see an engine usually following?
Yeah, it's a commonly asked question. Chief, I don't know if you want to...
No, you're right. The ambulance doesn't go alone. There's 2 people on the ambulance. The fire truck goes with the additional 3 people to help with staffing, you know, to lift patients out of the houses and assist with stretcher
That really
operation.
makes you
And they're all,
feel good.
yeah, no, it's good. A lot of if they're not needed, they turn them around and they staff the second ambulance. But no, they respond together as a 5-person crew to all EMS calls.
It makes you really feel good because the traffic, I live right on 77 and the traffic has gotten bad. So seeing the rescue, know they can zero in on what they're there for, and then the engine comes and then, you know, police, it makes you feel that this town is being adequately taken care
Yeah.
of.
And you mentioned the police department. All the police officers are trained at the basic EMT level, so they are EMS providers as well, so.
And hopefully, everybody that's hired is an EMT.
Correct.
Is that the case?
Yep.
Good.
No, it's a great point. And also, you know, it does promote a team culture. You know, you guys are the priority, obviously, but when we have the entire team going, it just does help. The cohesion does help, so.
Yeah, and like going back to what the chief said, you know, a lot of people say, "Oh, why does the ambulance come on calls?" It's you know, the ambulance comes with us on fire calls too, and you know, when we have an actual incident, an actual house fire in Cape, it takes quite a lot of people to actually put that fire out, and to initially have 5 people there on scene is huge, especially to meet the minimum standards for staffing. It's just it takes a burden off of us. Obviously, we're going to get the surrounding communities to come to if it's an actual fire, but we go on EMS calls and they come on fire calls, so it's vice versa. We always work as a team together. So
Yeah, and there's just so many benefits to have staffing on duty there. Just the response times. That truck's out of the station and on scene quicker than it was for us to get from our houses, drive to the station, get out, get the trucks going. So it makes a huge difference to save
It's
time.
obviously a huge improvement that I'm not sure other towns have.
You're correct, especially towns of this size. We are fortunate to be a town of this size to have the on-duty staffing we have. I mean, just by comparison, Biddeford's a lot bigger town, a small city really, and they only have 8 on duty during the day. So they've only got 3 more than Cape Elizabeth. So we are very fortunate to have the the support we have.
And more are trained not only for fire, but for EMT.
The vast majority of them are cross-trained, correct.
We are lucky, you know, we have that initial, the 5 people. We have a strong call staff too, and then, you know, we have South Portland, Portland, Scarborough, you know, right there. A lot of communities, they just don't have that. So we are lucky. And you'll see some of the fires later, you know, where that mutual aid comes into play. This is engine 1, the 2004. When the new pumper was purchased, this went out for refurbishment. It's repainted, great picture. All red, I think it looks better. There she is again. This is our favorite spot to take photos of the trucks. I don't know why. 2023, another ambulance, kind of matched the other one. It's great, you know, the chief mentioned if we get a second medical call, it's nice to have 2 that are the same. You know, I'm a basic EMT. I'm not a paramedic, but you know, the folks working in the back there, they appreciate the consistency of knowing, okay, this is where my tools are, and it's going to be the same on both rescues. So this is huge for us.
What did that cost ballpark? Just what is a rescue truck cost for that cost?
Well,
Yeah.
I think
Buy an ambulance, say, the last one we purchased was for the ambulance around 300,000. For that 2023 engine 61s at Cape Cod was 630,000 2 years ago. And to buy that truck today, it's like $900,000.
that was a deal back then.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Pretty lucky. You know, one of the creative ways that a lot of the larger towns are doing is remounting the boxes on new chassis. They do get worn pretty well. 2023, Stephen Young, appointed chief. This is another big year. Increased the firefighters to, instead of 2 on duty all the time, it was 3. And I think everyone, you know, on this side can attest that having a crew of 3 versus 2 on the engine made a huge difference. You know, very difficult working with a crew of 2 only on the squad. You know, as the operator, which I often was, you know, you go to a fire call and you'd have to do a million different things. Having that 3rd person, and eventually the ambulance too, just relieves so much of the duties that we'd have to do.
And like Jake says, a few years ago, well, a year and a half ago now, we went to that 5th person on duty at night. We had to build another sleeping quarters in the station, do some renovations. Again, we were supported by the town council to fund that, but just as a point of interest, you all know if you call the ambulance now, you get a bill in the mail for the call, usually paid by insurance and stuff. The calls and the billing we have cover about 50% of the cost of having the staff in here. So it's not all tax dollars. About 50% of it's funded by the cost of your ride to the hospital. So.
One of the other things that happened, shortly after the chief was appointed, was the ambulance at first didn't have air packs on it. And oftentimes the folks staffing the ambulance were, just EMTs and not firefighters. Eventually, more and more people got cross-trained. And so air packs and some hand tools were put on the ambulance so that they could, respond just like the fire truck. And that was kind of a big deal, because otherwise you'd have to kind of go over to the squad and grab an air pack. It's very awkward. Another photo here of Cape Cottage Station. Nice winter day here. This was a few years ago, but, pretty blue sky. Same photo here, of course, at the fort. A little bit of a rainy day. I was kind of concerned that we couldn't get the trucks out, but we did all right. We'll go day to day here. We a lot of photos back at the station here that we'd like to share. We have a few of this fire here. This was on Algonquin, 2 Algonquin, I believe. And we'll get to it in a second, but this was, certainly a challenging one. Another photo of Cape Cottage Station. No, some things never change. Police blocking the fire bay. Notice the Christmas tree. For a long time, we did some pretty good holiday decorations. Another photo, getting back from a call. There's really nothing like being on Shore Road at 3 in the morning. It's pretty great. You could smell the donuts being made. It was nice. That mixed with the salty air was good. So this was that fire that I mentioned. This was Algonquin Road, and I wasn't a part of this one. I was actually listening to it on the radio, and it was challenging, certainly. And Johnny, maybe you want to speak on that, or the chief?
This fire here, it was actually started with a light in a closet that some sweaters were stacked up too high and touched the light bulb and finally ignited and caused a fire. So if you have lights in your closet at home, make sure you keep them clear of any clothing and stuff. So, but yeah, that, like Jake said, that was a daytime fire. So before we were fully staffed on the trucks, I think we had the crew of 2.
Yeah.
But they made a difference stopping that fire, and obviously we have mutual aid coming on this one. So.
Yeah. Yeah, it was tough. Generally, if we have a fire or report of a fire, we get a lot of the members. This just happened to be a time during the day where it was tough, and I think the second in truck was Scarborough. I do believe that was engine 1. So kind of a rare thing, but sometimes it does happen. Just some of the boys there. A couple right here.
Back in my younger days.
Yeah. I think this is before COVID, but you were ahead of the times there with the mask.
Yeah, I think this was like
COVID time.
10 years before COVID.
I cannot remember the year. I think it was before 2020. I'm not sure, but we had what we call the Great Pond Fire. We got another couple pictures of it, but basically we got a call for a smoke investigation around Fowler Road, and we were dispatched. We were searching for a while.
Yeah. So this fire, like Jake said, get called in as a smoke investigation. We couldn't find it. I was on this call. We drove around for 30 minutes. We could not find it, and so we're driving down Fowler Road, and we saw smoke coming across from Great Pond, and we looked through the binoculars, and fire. You could see the smoke swirling, doing swirls. This took a ton of resources to put this fire out. We actually had to call the helicopter from Augusta to come in and do water drops for us. So they sent the Maine Forest helicopter from Augusta, which was the first time. We also had to use boats to get from one end of Great Pond to the other to bring crews out. So we had to activate the wet team so they could bring us out with the hoses and stuff. And it was started by a campfire.
Yeah, it was just a very difficult area to get to. You know, on the outer edge of Bowery Beach Road. I don't think we could have even walked in from 77. Doing a lot of bushwhacking, but yeah, that was a challenging one. And also, big thanks to the wet team. I mean, if we didn't have that boat, I don't know what we'd do. Another photo of some of the guys here. And I believe this was a training burn. I think this was Tamrose. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of times we get buildings that people donate to us, and we'll do trainings in them, which is huge. We really don't get that opportunity very often. Over the years, certain standards have changed in burning houses down, so when we get an opportunity to train like this, these were a couple old buildings, a Tamaro landscaping shop. They let us do some training in them, and it's a great opportunity for the guys.
More training, you know, I do think that we probably have the best looking staff. You know, I really do think that. We're pretty lucky. Looks like down at Public Works or something. Yeah, I think we're doing a little bit of big water training. Cover photo. Yeah, so this was back in 2018. Call came in, it was the middle of the night sometime, but this was at the corner there of Spurwink and 77. Call came in, side of the house was fully engulfed. I think PD was there first, and they reported the same thing. We have a couple photos from here, but just a pretty challenging fire. The captain mentioned, you know, the use of foam. Obviously, that's at the time engine 1, and during overhaul, we did put a healthy coat of that on. But we were there for a pretty long time controlling that. The deputy took this one. It's a great photo. You can kind of see what's going on there. It looks pretty hot. It was.
What started it?
I don't know if there was.
Yeah, that one there was so much damage, there was never really an official cause determined, but it possibly could have been a candle, so, but it kind of went as undetermined. There was nobody home at the time, and they had left town earlier that evening, they might have left a candle going, so. Candles are good for business.
Was the house totally destroyed?
Yes, in fact, there's a new house and a road going in where that house was down here on 77.
Yeah, Cadence Lane.
Or something.
Yep.
Yeah.
Connected with the church. I think it was an older house, right?
Yeah, it was on this side of the road going down. Like I say, they built new houses and put a street in where it was now.
Yeah. Standalone house and then also a garage too. Both were demolished after it. Another photo there. Exterior attack. With a lot of these photos, we're kind of jumping around with time. You know, we're kind of going through the eras here, but I think it's important. This is a more recent fire. This is South Portland. You know, with obviously having the luxury of you know, a crew 24/7 on the squad on the engine. You know, we do have the ability to help out our neighbors more expeditiously. And this was one, it wasn't too long ago, I think it was like a year ago or something, but we went and it was Route 1, not the Maine motel, I think it was a Budget Inn or something, but we went there and helped our friends out there. A lot of firefighters at that one. You were there. A lot of firefighters. Again, some good-looking guys there, you know. Good-looking crew. Go back to the Great Pond Fire a little bit. Like the captain was saying, we had a helicopter, and I believe it was taking pics of the water. Gosh, wasn't it from? It's from the ocean, wasn't it?
No,
I don't think it was. It from the pond there.
So the Forest Service has to actually bring that helicopter down without the bucket on it, and so they bring the bucket in the helicopter. He had to land on the side of Great Pond, hook the bucket up, and that holds, I believe, 300 gallons of water. So then he hooks it up, and he has a trigger inside the cab of the helicopter where he can dump the water. So he'll land that down close enough to the water. The water will fill up in the bucket, and he comes up. And it was quite remarkable seeing him drop it, because we were talking to him on State Fire, a channel, and he was dropping it. I'm not even kidding, from me to Kenny. And like he was hitting the spots exactly where we wanted. We're like, "Can you drop it here?" He's like, "Sure," like 4 feet away from us. And it was pretty wild to watch, because I've never seen that in operation. But that's why they're here. We called them up, and they were here in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
20 minutes they flew down.
Yeah. Yeah, it was amazing. These guys, though, they do it every day, especially in the fire season. But it's still remarkable. This particular area was incredible. Looks like you're on your phone there. So. Yeah. There's another one here. I think, John, you can speak to that one.
Yeah, so this is fire down behind Kettle Cove Ice Cream on Crescent View Road. It's me on the hose line there on the left. This was an early morning fire. The whole back of the building was going when we got there. So we attacked it from the outside before we moved into the front. But it was a snowy night. It was winter conditions. People were, biggest thing, people walking around, you're slipping and trying to carry a hose around. It's pitch black out. So,
And that fire there was started, they had just had the floors refinished, and they left some oil-soaked rags in a bad spot, so.
Was it Kettle Cove itself, the restaurant itself?
no, it was Crescent View Road, which is behind Kettle Cove. So you go down Kettle Cove Road, take a right on Crescent View Road.
Engine 2 taking a break. We had to go down to Public Works to get this kind of interesting shot, but mechanics down there, they do a great job with the whole fleet. One of the more, I guess, remarkable fires we've had was one of the times in by the sea. And I can't find a whole lot of great photos. I'm still looking, but that was something. That was a good one.
Yeah, I think this one was down on Front Street in South Portland.
This one, yeah.
This is the Front Street condos down by the Coast Guard base in South Portland.
Training burn right behind the high school. Obviously, this building isn't there anymore. But I think this was 95 they did this, and it's too bad. There's a couple of other good photos, but it showed some really good vent holes in the roof. Pretty impressive. But you can see they had the opportunity to do some live fire. It's great. A little bit of training. This was earlier this year. Good photos of the trucks, looking good. Peter Guggen's looking at his phone. Certainly with the per diems and staff in the trucks, things change a little bit, but start a shift, we like to check the equipment, and gives us a good opportunity to kind of put the hose in the street and pump the truck. So anytime you see that in front of town center, don't be alarmed unless there is a fire. Another great photo here. Smokey's certainly in the photo there, but a couple of the old trucks and certainly the older guard there. A lot of Smokey. That costume got a lot of use. This is the refurbished ladder truck. I think this was a training, but I'm not sure. But
No, that was a fire on Eastman Road.
was it?
Yes. I'm on the tip of the ladder.
Oh my gosh. God bless you. Yeah. Hope it wasn't a windy day.
No, it wasn't bad.
Yeah.
Well, he wants to know who took the picture.
I'm
Yeah,
not sure who took the picture.
This is one of our Memorial Day parades. You know, certainly things change over the years, but this is a tradition that we stay pretty consistent on. And you know, even last year, you know, we try to get a good turnout for that. Another photo there of Engine 3, looking sharp. Crew in the back enjoying it. Photo there of Shore Road, what's now Rosemont, of course. And from what I understand, that building burned a couple times, right? But I don't know if this was Family Fun Day or some sort of parade, but had the whole fleet going. Now, we were looking at this photo. We weren't sure if this was going in for refurb or something, but this might have been the end of the line for this truck. Not sure. Certainly one of the older pictures here.
yeah, you probably recognize a few people in that photo, Jim. I believe that was like early 60s. I don't know the exact date and the names of it, but that was, at the time, that was the board engineers of the fire department, the chief and all the officers, so.
That's my dad, third from the right in the back row.
Well, it looks like you.
Yeah,
And Bill Jordan, right?
yeah, Bill Jordan. And Doug Murray was the chief at the time.
This was a auto extrication drill with the rescue company. I believe we're going to be having one tomorrow too. But you know, a lot of things that I liked about this photo, and kind of how neat and organized all the tools were laid out. Got everyone involved here. Yeah. Another fire there during the winter. I don't know if you can speak to this one. I'm not sure.
Hemlock Hill. Started by wood stove ashes.
Yeah, in the garage, by the garage, yeah. That was a long time ago, Jake.
Jeez.
That was Peter Gleason's car sitting there.
Is that it? The infamous one. It's got the lights on there. I should have known. I was trying to look for more of the public works building. I'll still kind of hunt around, but I did find this one kind of interesting. You know, obviously we talked about the current station, but the old bones are right here, right before it was renovated. Look at that asphalt too. It looks great. You know, fresh coat, nice and smooth. Boys out in the ladder there. Little family fun day here.
Yeah, we wouldn't dare do that anymore.
The kids are having fun though. That's all that matters, I think.
It wasn't the foam you had to worry about. It was them beating themselves up in it and running into each other. And, yeah.
Looks like this was one of the lobster bakes here. This is an annual event, wasn't it? Something? Yeah. Got a couple photos from that. I think if we had a lobster bake now, we'd have just about the whole department go.
Yeah, no, the rescue did it annually. The captain at the time, Jim Murray, always put on a lobster bake for the crew.
Another one there. Looks like Tim Cram over there enjoying a corn cob or something. Now the photo at the fort. This is kind of interesting. We have a couple photos of this with the rescue sled, which I thought was pretty clever. You know, obviously the trick in the wintertime with some of the ponds is, you know, maybe getting people out. But I don't know much about the sled itself, but you know, it looks like it was maybe department built, but it looks great.
Came from Scarborough's Harmless Corner Station. They didn't use it anymore.
They didn't want it?
Okay.
Do you know how long we had it?
We probably had it 10 or 15 years, but it didn't get much use,
Yeah.
if at all.
Was it at town center or behind
Behind town.
town hall? There's engine 2 there, right at the factory. The pond inspection looks good. I got to work on those rims. That's the true color of the rims. I got to work on that. Awfully shiny though. Some of the engine 1 boys there. Looks like Chief McGouldrick too. I see a couple of the current members. Pat Cotter, of course. Jason Grant. And of course Mike Davis. The legend. Yeah. Pretty interesting. This was, you know, when I believe his engine 2 was dedicated. And this award is pretty special that we have. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, no, they dedicated the truck to John Sibley, which was a longtime member of the department that was more than a loyal, dedicated member for many years. So currently, every year at our annual banquet, we give the Chiefs Award. We renamed the Chiefs Award after John J. Sibley. So now it's called the John J. Sibley kind of Firefighter of the Year Award.
This photo here, this was one of the last days Peter Gleason was chief. We're all kind of hanging out. I guess I wanted to break, so I went up on the ladder. But see the captain there on the left, Matt Dillenbeck, of course. But just hanging out, waiting for the next one. Ah, great photo, 78 Scott Dyer. Sometimes, you know, the morning calls would certainly offer a great backdrop, and that was one of them. I think that was a winter day, but still can't beat it. One of the things too, you know, we're pretty lucky where we are. You'll often see us out on the apron. The sunset, you know, at Town Center Station, you can't beat it. So it's pretty nice. You know, we don't have a call. We're usually out there just shooting the breeze. I think this is right after we got the new ladder truck, as it was running out the back. I don't think we had it in service quite yet. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, certainly.
I have two.
Start us off.
What, do you have any photos from when there was a unit in the basement of Town Hall?
We do have a couple.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I've only seen aerial photos.
Yeah. I didn't find a whole lot, and that's why I kind of do want to do another iteration of this to kind of focus on that time.
Yeah. So was that temporary even when it was put in?
I think
Considered to be temporary.
it was until I think it was
Yeah, there was a truck station there before this station in Town Center was built in the 50s, and actually the hose tower was there. The guys could hang hose up to dry it at Town Hall. They've since removed that, but that was still in service up to a few years ago that we could hang hose in that tower. So that was the Town Center fire station for many years. As Jim can speak to, there's not really many residents over here. This was all farmland back 100 years ago. So all the population was over in Cape Cottage.
I remember Jerry Murray saying when he was a kid, when the fire alarm would go off and he'd jump over the fence because he lived out there in the corner, and to get to ride the fire truck, he was just a kid.
It's funny.
Question. I've heard that the Cape Fire Department used to have a great band. there any plans to reinstate the band?
We got to learn how to play instruments. I mean, I don't know.
Well, you say that, we got some guys that are pretty talented. We've got a drummer, we got Ernie can sing, so we could maybe put the band back together, so.
That's actually a great thing to bring up because we do have some of the relics from that. And I wish I took a picture of it. They are at the station. Yeah.
Drum, I think, is still in.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. We could start that back up. That'd be a big morale booster. But any other questions?
Are there more fires these days, or what's the trend?
Trends down. You know, obviously it's unpredictable, but you know it has been going down, and a lot of that is attributed to fire prevention. And you know the way buildings are built now is certainly more safe, and I think public awareness.
Yeah, like I say, early detection, smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors. You know, people catching the fires while they're small, and everybody's got a fire blanket or an extinguisher in the house. So I can't help but think there's a lot of incidents that we never know about that people take care of on their own, which is a good thing. So, but
You know the dynamic of the department's a lot different too, and obviously the call staff is still strong, and you know 20 years ago it sounded like it was very strong. But by having 5 people that are capable of fighting the fire at the station immediately, you know, when we do get an incident, it cuts off a huge amount of that time for that fire to grow. So we can put a quick stop to it sooner.
we have never had anybody killed in the line of duty, but we have had some injuries and stuff. So, yeah, in fact, one of that fires we showed down in '77, one of our firefighters lost a finger at, got caught in the aerial ladder. So things do happen. So, and we have a local forest ranger that serves this area and stuff, and we got a good working relationship with him. So, yeah, we're very fortunate to have them here, and they'll give us any resource we need. So.